Hello guys, welcome back to this tutorial. Today is this is going to be our second module in the series of Mikrotik training for community network engineers. And it doesn't really mean that you have to be a community network engineer for you to use or consume this particular uh, resource. So as we discussed in our last previous our last class, we looked at different series or different models of Mikrotik, and we realized that Mikrotik also runs on a router OS operating system. If we talk about routers, and also we have switch OS for switches. And the two of these operating systems can easily be managed or accessed using a dedicated tool called Winbox, which is a Mikrotik tool. I'll put in the comment section the link to the Winbox where you can download and install. For this session, we are going to see how we can access Mikrotik or router board interfaces using different methods. So the first method that we are going to look at is using the Winbox tool. And then the second method that we are going to look at is using a web portal, which sometimes is called WebFig. And then we're also going to look at how to access, router OS interface using SSH console and telnet. And in this case, we are going to use a third-party tool called Putty, which again, I'm also going to share the link in the comment, and you can download and install. And finally, we will be running a final project which will be using API to communicate to our router. And in this case, it will require that you have a basic understanding on high-end programming languages. For example, you'll be either required to understand PHP or Python. So ladies and gentlemen, allow me continue. And please, if you have any question or any comment, feel free to leave it in the comment section below and I'll be able to revert back to you. So Winbox is a tool that is very robust and it is independent. It is not for Windows, it is not for Mac OS, it is not for uh, Linux. It is a cross-platform application that you can run and operate without really installing. So the first time you will download, you will just run it and it will not really install in your computer. It will run as a slave independent application. It is a lightweight and therefore does not consume a lot of memory resources. So I'll start by looking at the external interface of Winbox. The first thing we'll see is the version that you are running. So for this case, I'm running the latest version, which is 3.37 as per this tutorial. And it is a 64-bit. Of course, if your laptop or PC is a 32-bit, you will be required to download a 32-bit version. As other applications, we have the tab file where we can open a new stored Winbox addresses or sessions. We can open another already stored one. So this is, but just new is to create one. To open, you open already existing, and you can also save a particular session as the way you want it with different name. If you want to close this window, you just go to exit and the window, the application will be closed. Now, going to the tools, Winbox has two operation modes. So one is the legacy, which is the default whenever you install it. And again, you can also enable the advanced mode. So when you enable advanced mode, you'll see additional fields that you need to provide for you to connect to the router. So apart from just using your login username and password, you can also require that you have your session set, you have your group. So sometimes you can create groups in the Mikrotik, and only particular users from a certain group can be able to log in. So may let's say you have admin group, super admin group, and such and such. For this tutorial, we will look at accessing the interface using the legacy mode, which will only require us that we connect to the router either using the IP address or and username and password, or we're using MAC address, username and password. If you look at this button below here, there is add and set button. So for example, this is a configuration files that I have, and I do not want to keep on remembering the password. So what I can do, I can just come to add and set, and then it will add the credentials to this um, section of managed connections. So whenever I click on it, it will automatically pop up the settings and I'll be able to log in. You can always opt to delete if you want, but again, for this to be very secure, you need to set a master password. So master password allow you to access managed connections, and this needs to be very secure because once someone access it, they will be able to tap and log in, and that will compromise your router. Now, if you want to see how many or the list of network or devices that you have on your network, you will be able to look at the neighbors tab. At the neighbors tab, when you click refresh, it will keep on refreshing and trying to look at if there is other Mikrotik devices in the network that can be accessed using this Winbox. And therefore, it will list the devices with their MAC addresses, with their IP address, with their identity name. If the identity name has not been renamed, it will come to default, which is Mikrotik, and the version that your router board is running on. So for this, we are running on 6.49.2, which is a stable version, and the router board that you're running. So for this, as I said earlier, I'm doing my tutorials using RB951 UI 2HND. Now, allow me connect to this router. So how do we connect? There are two ways that you connect. One, you can connect using the IP address, the username, and the login. But now, if you use the IP address, there is high chances that if that IP address change, or if you change that IP address, then your session will end and you'll be logged out and you're required to log in again with a new IP address. But if you are using the MAC address, remember MAC address are not changing, so it is very healthy to use MAC address, not unless you disable MAC address login in your settings. So for this case, I'm going to use the two methods to log in. So first I'll use MAC address. So you see here, connect to MAC address, connect, then logging here is your username, and password is always your password. Then you can click connect. Remember, there is connect to Roman, which we will look into what is the difference, why sometimes do you need to connect to Roman, and how do we enable Roman connection or access. So for this case, we are going to connect just directly, and because the password is wrong, it will tell you that you have wrong username or password. As a good best practice, you cannot say that you have entered wrong username, and then if someone enters a wrong username, a wrong password, you say you have entered a wrong password. So that will give a hacker a better way of understanding your network, your login credentials. So For example, I just know that, okay, username is fine, so I just need to hassle the password to crack. But for this case, I log in with the current password, and this is what you will see. Mostly, if you are accessing this router in the very first time with the default settings, it will give you a pop-up window asking you either to, accept default settings and continue, or to discard the default settings. It is upon you to decide. If you are an advanced network engineer or advanced in Mikrotik, you can decide to do away with all configurations, and then you start from zero. Otherwise, there are some few firewalls that are put in, some few logins, some few settings that are activated by default. But we agree that default settings need to be discarded, and therefore you start from zero. Hello, viewers. As a best practice, I'll prefer that whatever you are going to change in any kind of your networking, whenever you're doing configuration, please make it a best practice to always document any single change that you're going to make on a networking device. Why do I say so? In the first 2 days, 3 weeks, your mind is still sharp and you still remember the logins, you still remember why you changed what. But as you continue to stay there, or as you continue to disconnect with your router, once it is working well, there are some parameters that you will forget as to why you added them. And how you can track. And again, for purpose of transfer and onboarding of new engineers or new technicians or network NOC engineers, it is very important to document each and every step or everything that you want to change in your networking environment. So now we are in what we call a router OS interface. A router OS interface will give you, it's divided into different segments, sections. So on the far left, you'll see a blue bar, which is written down here as router OS Winbox. That is just to tell you that you are running a router OS on a Winbox. And then on the upper topmost, you'll see the session that is logged in. In this case, we have logged in as an admin using a MAC address, which is indicated there, and on a device which is this one, it will give you an identity of that device. And what have we used? We have used a Winbox, which is 64-bit, and it is version 6. It is running an operating system which is version 6.492 on a router board 951 UI. And in bracket, you can see there is MIPSBE. That is the architecture. Please note, this is the architecture of this device. So if you are going to download, to upgrade packages, you cannot upgrade packages for a different architecture into MPISBE architecture. So we need to note that, and we need to take that into consideration. In the second layer, we have undo and redo. You can always, redo the changes, or you can remove the changes by undoing before you save and quit. But remember, once you've saved and you restarted your router, those settings cannot be undone. And then there's the safe mode that you can enable. So if you enable safe mode, there are some settings that you will not be able to change. Otherwise, if you leave them open, you'll be able to do all settings. And therefore, this session is running on a MAC address and not IP address, because we have logged in using MAC address. And then there is the session. So we can choose to open a new session. We can create a new session, open or save. And then there is also an autosave. So you need to enable autosave so that it allow you to save sessions upon closing the window. Looking at the settings, we some comments. So at times, if you want to see advanced some other advanced things like displaying passwords, so you check this. If you check this, passwords will be visible. If you uncheck, if you check it, passwords will be hidden. If you uncheck, then you'll be able to see the passwords. The same if you check inline comments, you'll be able to see comments on the interfaces and any other areas of configuration. We have a dashboard. So the dashboard here will allow us to know some few things like time, date, CPU, and memory and uptime of this device. So for example, if I had time, on your far right end corner, you'll see time counting, like you'll know, okay, I'm working at this particular time. So like this time, it is 0906 in the morning, and that is the real time that I'm seeing. So it is automatically synchronized. Otherwise, we will again look at how to synchronize your time with the local time using NF, a protocol dedicated for time management. And then we can also add date. So date will be on the second side from your right, and it will show you the current date. The same time you can add the CPU. So by now, this is very important because it is also good to know like what is the CPU utilization. Is it overheating? Is it being overutilized? And which processes are running in the background? And then we have memory. Memory will give us like the amount of memory that is remaining or that which has been used, so that you can be able to have a snapshot. And uptime gives you like the general time that your device has been running since you switched it on. So these are very key parameters that you can use to even perform a device or to evaluate the device performance, especially on memory and CPU. Those are very good indicators that you can always keep on looking at. Ladies and gentlemen, that is on the upper second layer. If you look at your left, where we have menus and different writings or labels, on your left, sorry, on your left hand, we have different functionalities that have been set aside like as a menu. Remember, if you are visiting a website, sometimes you can see sorry, a side menu. So any of these have their own different functionalities, and they're divided into different categories. So in the first one, we have quick set, which is normally is just to give you a very fast way of configuring your router, and it will give you some status like what are you going to do. So it's a bit of check rather than calling commands. And this brown area is referred to as work area. So like your workbench where you bring all things and you do configurations inside here. So any window that will click, any function that you'll want to click will just pop up inside here. You can be able to expand it to fill in the space, or you can able to minimize it depending on your preference. And from there we have Capsman, which we'll also look at different things. So so this device divided into different categories or different segments, as I said earlier. So we have specific settings for the system itself, like the device itself. We have routing functionalities. We have management functionalities, and we have support functionalities. For example, anything that runs from bridge to IP is more of management. From again, some parts of IP down to routing is on the routing management segment, and then we have settings. And then if you come to queues, this is more of bandwidth management. We go to file. This is where you can do FCP, like check on what files do you have, which ones do you need to remove, and which one do you need to upload, and then checking the logs. Radius is for management. Then we have tools, which is also reflecting on either management and monitoring. We have inbuilt terminal, which can be used to do inline or to do on system or inline terminal access. And then we have .1x, which is just functionality, meta router, partition, and other support stuff. So in this tutorial, I think now we understand the layout of Winbox. I'll log out, I'll close this, and then log in using IP address. Remember the first time we logged in using MAC address? So now we want to log in using IP address. For you to log in using IP address, you just need to click on IP. So you can choose to click on IP if it is listed here, or if you have your static IP in mind, you can just type it inside here. But remember, 192.168.88.1 is the default IP, management IP for Mikrotik. Then input your password and you will also be able to log in. But now do you see the change? In the first one, the user who logged in was admin, but he logged in using a MAC address. But in this case, it is now reflecting that we are logged in using an IP address. Other things remain the same. And at the same time, looking at the sessions, you realize that our session is now running on an IP and not MAC address. Remember, when you are doing bulk management of different devices, sometimes you might not be able to use MAC addresses because maybe you are doing a remote login and you cannot remote SSH into a device using MAC address. So what you'll do, you will be able to set static IPs so that you can remote SSH or access the network, the Mikrotik devices using different IPs. So we could add as many IPs as possible. So like, for example, we could have opened a new one, we could have saved that one, or we could have just come and open what we have saved. So here you'll see these are all sessions that are running that we can easily just open and continue with. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that brings me to the next way of accessing the interface, and that is using using the IP address on web portal. So for me to do that, I'll open up my browser, and in this I'll create a new tab. Then I'll write 192.168.88.1 and then tab. This is the Mikrotik interface when we are accessing it using the web fig. Remember, here it comes with another additional tools that again it will direct you to download Winbox. It will tell you that you can still telnet, and it has some graphs that will even you can uh, it will show you once you log in, or once you have graphed your provision, your graphing, you will be able to see different interfaces sending you know traffic or receiving traffic. So here I'll just input my password and then log in. So you'll notice that there is a slight difference in the way these ones are looking. They look a bit more, nice to the face. But again, the functionalities are quite similar. Um, by default, if you log in using WebFig, you will not really see a blank working area. You will always see something, and that something is always the interfaces of your router. And that brings me to another very important section of this tutorial, which we will be dealing with logical interfaces of router OS, or not physical router, but logical faces or interfaces of a router. So, for example, we have you can see here we have very many things going on. You can see numbers counting, and this means that there is a traffic that is flowing, and we'll really look into all those different interfaces. I think we have looked at this, but remember there is a slight change, as I said, in the router, in the on the Winbox. Uh, the last lower section, like undo, redo, hide password, safe mode, all these ones were at the top here, and the top where we have RouterOS version, and therefore, because of the design of this one, they have been pulled down here. So we can undo down here, we can redo down here, we can hide passwords here, we can do safe mode down here, and we can also check on other graphical. So remember, ladies and gentlemen, that is all I have for today. And the other thing that before I end this, I'll also show you how to access the same interface using SSH. SSH, remember, is not having any access to SSH, does not have any, let's say, good user interface like this. There is no buttons, like nothing. You just see the black screen, and it requires that you have some advanced skills. So what you are going to see in the SSH is actually let me first of all log in into the, what you are going to see is actually the terminal. So even the web application, the WebFig, allows you to run a terminal here, which we can always see like different functions that we have, and we can always see all the functionalities that we have on the other side coming here. But if I do that and see, like, this is just a number of things that we have, functionalities, and they are explained. If you want to quit, you can do quit. If you want radius, just do radius. If you want to do routing, you go to routing. And there are different coloring system that I think you need to know. There are pink one, they are greenish, they are bluish. So each and every one of these define a different state of the router that you're accessing. So sometimes you can be accessing at the config mode, if when like you're doing the specific configuration to interfaces or interface mode. So yeah, we will look at all that. And now allow me to log out all this, and then we can now look at the last way of accessing, and that is using a third-party tool called Putty. So as I'd said earlier, of course, if you are running on the same network, you have the same Putty on the same network, then you can be able to use MAC address. But most preferably, they do use IP address, and it is even here. So for this case, if I say 192.168.88.1, and then remember, of course, we'll be looking at different ports and which ports are dedicated for what. But if you look here, there is SSH, there is serial, there is other. So for us to log in, first I'll want us to log in using a telnet. We'll go to other, and then we select here a telnet, right? Telnet is running on port 23 by default. So you change this to port, already it is port 23, and then you just say open. So once you open, it will ask you to log in, and your login is admin because that is the username and password that you will set. And this is what we'll have on screen. So similarly, it will just tell you, you can see this is Mikrotik written in a very nice way with MMIIKKRROOTTKK. So yeah, that is it. But it will give you some few things that tab can always help you to complete demands, complete let's say complete other things or commands. But again, if you do double, that means double dot, then mean you are coming back. If you do slash, that you are going to the root. But now this is now the interface that you will interact with if you are dealing with let's say you are SSHing into a remote device, and this really requires that you understand Mikrotik into details for sure, because there is no anything that you'll see like physically visual based configuration is not here. You will always try do things that you understand. For example, if you want to go to IP, you'll type IP, and then if you want to know more, just question it, and you'll see that in the IP we can see DNS, you can see hotspot, you can see firewalls, you can see a lot of things, and even accountability. And if I say addresses add, and then I say tab, it will add me addresses. And if I plug, I'm now in the IP addresses interface. And when you're there, you can still see whether you can add IP address, you can comment, you can disable, you can edit, enable, but for this case, you can just say print. So you notice that after you are in the interface, the other comments or other things change color, and now they are in pink. So if I say print, it will show me print, and then I'll be able to see current IP addresses that I have. Simple as that. But anyway, don't worry, this is something that we're gonna look into, and I'll have to quit this. But remember, you cannot quit at the at the interface point, so we'll have to go back to the root, and then from there we can quit, and it will end that session. The other way that we would want to log in using a remote third-party device or application is still using Putty, but now we are going to use 192.168.88.1, which is the same IP, but we are changing the port because we are port 22 is a SSH port by default, although you can change it to whatever port you want for security purpose. And then if you click open, you still see now there are different things. The telnet one will just tell you to log in, and remember, telnet is not as secure as telnet send sessions as they are. SSH will encrypt your info, your login credential, and send them as encrypted data, and therefore we log in as, because we are creating a session, and this way we just say we are logging in as admin, and it will tell you that now we are going to log in as admin, yes, but on which IP? On that IP that we have provided, and then we just provide password and we need to log in. I think the session ended. I think for this, it's really I need to disconnect this so that I can log in, because it checks whether there is an active session with that particular IP. So let me try again. Open, log in as admin, and then password. So you see now it is logging in, but now it is very specific on a specific on a certain session. And remember, if you keep this window for a certain time without working on it, the session ends. So that is how secure SSH sometimes behave. So the same thing, we can question this, and we will always see different functionalities of the route of this router. And of course, yeah, that is what we have. And you can see there are a lot of things that we need to learn, and it's very good that we are in this together, and we will really learn a lot. So, ladies and gentlemen, that marks the end of our class today, and I hope you have enjoyed. You have seen how we can connect. We have seen how we can link up, and after this, we will be able to continue with learning. So in our next tutorial, we'll look at most of these functionalities, and we will do configuration hands-on going forward. Thank you, and please feel free to leave your questions or your comments in the comment section below. And also, please feel free to share this video with the other friends and your networks. Like and also subscribe for future uploads of the same. Bye.